Get more conversions from your website by taking advantage of these 6 tips from Chris Dayley on today's Magnificent Marketing Podcast. I am here today with Chris Dayley, and Chris is a digital marketing entrepreneur, speaker, and newer marketer who gets excited about helping businesses learn about what their users want on their website using psychology-based testing and analytics. He started his conversion optimization agency, Dayley Conversion, in 2014, which he later merged with Disruptive Advertising, where he currently works as VP of Site Testing and Optimization. And today, we are going to talk about 6 things to audit on your homepage and 1 test you can apply right away. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. As we were discussing right before the recording here, literally late yesterday afternoon, I was talking to my staff about homepage conversions and how we need to continuously have a huge focus. We're doing all this content marketing, all this targeted traffic. And if we're not converting every stitch of it that we can, we're just making things harder on ourselves, right? So really, really excited to talk to you about this today. The timing is very odd, but amazing at the same time. So again, the last thing we want to do is waste all this branding and awareness that we're doing, right? We have this big goal to get people's attention, earn their attention, get the right people to your site. So let's make sure we convert as much of that as we can, right? And I know you have a launch analysis for getting your home pages humming, and you have a 6-step plan. So I'd love to start at the top and start with value propositions, and I guess what will resonate best with your audience. What have you got for us here?
So let me take one step back. So one of the most dangerous things for people to do on a website is to assume they know what their audience wants on a website. And I see this all the time with business owners, with marketers. It's like, well, I've talked to my customers, I've talked to my users, they told me that they like this, they told me that they want this, or I know why people work with me, and so I know, therefore, what people want to see on my website. And the problem is that 2 and 2 don't go together. So value proposition, when you boil it down to what is a value proposition, it's really what are you offering that people care about? Because any business owner can list off 20 things that they do and that they do well, or even that they think they're the best in the world at. And usually there's only 2 or 3 of those that people actually care to see on your site.
Right.
And so with value proposition, there's a couple of questions that I'll typically ask. Number 1, when you come to a homepage of a website, is it clear to me within 2 to 3 seconds what you do? And is it clear to me within 2 to 3 seconds why I should care about what you do? And so those are the 2 kind of fundamental questions that I dig into. And when it comes to conversion rate optimization in particular, one of the things that I do with my clients all the time is we go through and we'll run A/B tests where we will list out 3 or 4 value propositions on version A of the site and 3 or 4 different value propositions on version B. And then we'll split traffic between the 2 and see which one generates more conversions. Because then you're literally just figuring out which value propositions resonate.
And this is, if we can we define value proposition? Because, we've had a lot of clarity over here with that breadcrumb offer, the tripwire. Tripwire almost has a bad connotation, but it really is basically like a leading low or no basically barrier of option, breadcrumb to get them into your world in some form or fashion. Is that what we're talking about? Like when they go to our site, they need to know what you do, but then you give them like a free 3-part series training on this, or download this amazing ebook that's going to help, really get you better at online, your homepage, checklist, right? Is that what we're talking about? Or are you defining value proposition as something else?
So there's 2 pieces, because we're going to talk about call to action in a minute. Call to action is what you want people to do on the page. Value proposition is why they should take action, right?
Okay.
So if it's a content piece, your value propositions are going to be things like learn how to build an awesome website in 3 minutes, and learn the 3 biggest mistakes that whatever. If it is a product that you're trying to sell, the value propositions are going to be why you want to buy this. So it could be value propositions specific to the product, like best smartphone on the market today and 50,000 apps available. Or it could be the value of your particular service, like free returns and 30% off and money back guarantee. Those are all value propositions.
Gotcha.
And so again, there's a litany of things you could put on your site. And so what you need to figure out is, what are the 2 or 3 things that are going to drive people to take action? So
for like your end goal, your services, your product. So we're talking about when people basically highlighting why you're so great. If you have a big membership community, join 50,000 of your peers. That's really by getting people into your membership. That's really how you get them, or your product. Or so right away, it's more on the lines of what you do in 3 seconds, and then tying value props around whatever that is. And again, it's impossible to give examples because there's millions of companies out there, right? But sure. Am I on the right page, or on the right track?
Yes, yeah. Why should somebody work with you, or why should someone buy your product? Why should someone download your ebook? That's what the value propositions are addressing. Why should somebody take action on something today?
Okay.
And so again, what you want to do, you don't want to assume that you know what value propositions should be on your site. You want to try your different approaches and say, so like for disruptive advertising, for example, there's a lot of reasons that people come to work with us. It could be because they have some pain, like, I don't know what should be on my site. And so I might list out some value propositions that's like, we'll help you find out what should be on your website. And, we'll run all the tests for you. Or that might not be what they care about at all. They might just want to know, hey, Chris will come and audit my site in the next 24 hours. And that's the value that I'm looking for, is I want quick turnaround time. I want quick feedback. So that's what you're trying to test here is, I could say a lot of things here. What can I say about why someone should work with me, or buy my product, or use my service, or download my ebook? What should I say about this that's ultimately going to drive the most action?
Gotcha. And I got a question for you on that. Do you suggest doing that in words or potentially a video? First thing people see is a little 30-second, being an explainer video, if it's like some sort of product or service, or is it words, or is it a combo?
The answer is yes. This is something that you need to test, because there are some audiences that respond phenomenally well to video. And if you have a short video, now the challenge with video that I will say is it's typically a much larger time commitment for somebody than reading a few bullet points, right? So reading 3 bullet points can take 5 seconds. Watching a 30-second video, it's 30 seconds. And so you want to be really careful about how much time are you asking someone to invest into this video. So if you do a video, it needs to be short and sweet, and you also need to make sure that you're not inundating people with too much information. Because that's what happens with video. It's like, well, I've got 30 seconds of time, so I can say everything about my service that they need to know. And the problem with that is they might get in the first 5 seconds, they might get the hook that they care about. And then the next 25 seconds, you might spend telling them about something they don't care about, and you might lose them. And so again, with video, you want to make sure that you are testing what should be in the video, how long should it be, and does that work better than just having some text on my site? So this is, again, I always recommend testing these things and making sure that you are, if you have a video, that you are constantly challenging yourself to optimize that video, the length, the content in it, the format, etc.
Gotcha. And I believe you had some really cool questions that you need to be asking yourself to define this and to get to this. You want to share some of those, what you should be asking yourself and your team or a company to be able to nail this down?
Yeah. So again, first it is, what do you offer and why should people care? So, and this is not like business wide. It's for this page, what are you offering? If it's your home page, you might be trying to get someone to click onto another page of your site. So why should they click on this thing and go to this other page of your site? So again, it could be view all of our services and, get a free quote, or get the 5 tips of whatever you're sharing. And then they click on this call to action to go to the next page. So what are you offering and why do people care? And the second question I always ask is, do you know with data which value propositions should be on this page or video? Or in other words, have you tried a different approach? Because again, you never want to assume, okay, well, here's the three things I want to tell people. You need to know, what are the three things people want to see here? Gotcha.
And as far as setting up those tests, some people might be able to have the dynamic and the time to when one visitor comes, then it switches to the next. For smaller companies, that's not necessarily an option. If you are a small business and you aren't getting gobs of traffic, because I've also heard to do true tests, you need, tens of thousands of visitors. But let's go down to the people who don't have that option. Do you suggest, or they don't have the bandwidth or the software to do the back and forth dynamic testing? Or do you suggest do it for like a month and see what happens, and then the next month? Or what are some good practices you've given for the smaller upstart business out there?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I have an ebook actually that covers some of like the basics of where can you get started. But you need to always do a true A/B test. The problem with saying, well, I ran it for this month and then I changed it next month is next month, like crap could hit the fan and your business might just be about to blow up no matter what you do on your site.
Yeah.
Right. Or next month might be a down month for your business and you don't know that yet. Next month there could, you might be changing your marketing efforts. And so all of a sudden you're getting crappy traffic to your site. So you need to do a true A/B test, even if you only get a few hundred visitors to your site per month. And it's not really that resource intensive. You can there's a free tool called Google Optimize that anybody can get set up with. I mean, it's from Google, so it connects in with Google Analytics. It's really easy to set up. And to run a value proposition A/B test is very simple. I mean, I've literally set these up in 10 minutes before, where you duplicate your homepage and just change out again, if it's content, it's much easier than a video. But if it's content, you can just swap out what are the 3 bullet points that you've listed there, and then just split the traffic between those 2 different pages, right? And
awesome.
So,
I think like a solution. I appreciate it. Yeah, because a lot of people
in a very short time.
Google Optimize. Awesome. All right. Well, cool. Thanks for all that, for that insight. I mean, it's you've given some really good take homes already. All right, guys, that's a wrap. No, I'm joking. All right, let's move to part 2, your call to action. What you should tell people to do. Let's dig in there.
Yeah. So the first thing that I always ask people when we're talking about a landing page, a home page, or whatever is, what do you actually want somebody to do on this page? Home pages are particularly challenging because there's not always one clear-cut thing you want people to do. One thing I hear very often is, well, I offer a bunch of different services or a bunch of different products. So, I want them to do whatever makes the most sense, right? I'm getting traffic from SEO and from social and from paid, and so some of these people might want to get a quote and some of these people might want to read my blog and some of these people might want my ebook or whatever. And right there, you're setting yourself up for a horrible homepage experience. Because what I see a lot of on homepages in particular is too many call to actions. There's just too much. You're asking people to do too many things and it's confusing. And so what you want to ask is, in the ideal scenario, what's the one thing that I would want people to do on this page?
Great.
So that's the first thing you want to figure out is, and that needs to be the primary call to action on the page. Well, how do you know what the primary call to action on the page is? If I come to your page, what is the thing that I see in the first few seconds?
Top fold.
Like what? Yes, like above the fold, what is the button or action that I am seeing? So is there a form? Is there a button? And if there's a button, is it the only button that stands out to me? Right. So if you're using, for example, this is another challenge that I see a lot is companies will have 4 buttons above the fold and they're all blue and they all say roughly the same thing, where it's like, you've got some text up here, get more info, text up here, get more info. So none of the call to action buttons stand out. And I have to read all of the text on your page in order to figure out which one I should do. So what you want to make sure of is, number one, that there is a single call to action that stands out on the page. It could be a video, even to watch a video, but there needs to be color contrast that draws your attention to that call to action. And it needs to be transparent, or in other words, you need to be very specific with what taking that action is going to do. If it's a button, it needs to say whatever, view our prices and services. If it's a download our ebook. If it's a form, then the form needs to tell you what to do. Fill out the form to get a free quote. Fill out the form to talk to a customer service representative, whatever it is. It needs to be obvious. If I do this thing, what is going to happen? And like I said, there needs to be one single thing that is clear, because what that does psychologically, you mentioned in my bio neuromarketing, the psychology aspect of marketing is what fascinates me. And what having a single clear call to action does, even if that's not the call to action that people are going to take, like even if they are coming for something other than this call to action, having that clear call to action psychologically just reassures people. It lets people know, okay, I don't need to worry about figuring out what I need to do.
Yeah,
right? No, there's a thing that I can go back to and that I can look at, and it's obvious to me.
And from a business building perspective, currently taking Matthew Pollard's course. It's a shout out to Matthew Pollard, great guy, great coach. And just part of the session where we talked about getting the right kind of business, right? So what you really want to do is like find who are you making the most happy? Or if you're just starting, who do you want to be, make the most happy? Who's your best customer? What are you best at? Right? Like what kind of, like if you were able to get 100 of these types of clients, who do they look like? Who are they? What service is that you're performing? Because I'll say here, when we do offer a plethora of services at Magnificent, we're great at a few. And so in the past, we kind of just said, here's everything we do, right? Horrible. Not only was it horrible for the kind of calls what we were getting because they were all over the board, but it didn't allow our company to focus and get better at the things that we were already great at. Now let's become magnificent at those, exceptionally magnificent at those now, right? So from a bigger perspective, and Chris, please, validate or invalidate whatever I'm saying, is we want to figure that out first, right? So you want to, and you want whatever that call to action that will eventually lead to that ideal customer. Is that how you all think it through as well?
Absolutely. And the one caveat that I'll put in there is this is another area. So I mentioned that this is a 6-point process that I go through. You want to test each of these 6 areas, because what you don't want to do is put a call to action on your page that is going to disqualify every person that comes to your site, or be something that doesn't resonate with them, right? So what you need to do is you need to say, what is the ideal action that I would like people to take? And if they don't want to take that action, what else might they want to do? And then run an A/B test. So again, for example, you might say, well, I want people to get a quote for my services. So let's have a version of my homepage where that's the primary call to action. But maybe if they don't want to get a quote for my services right now, maybe what they might want to do instead is first view my services and get more information about what I do. So let's have a B version of my page where instead of immediately asking them to get a quote, I ask them to view my services and prices or whatever. And so then that takes them in deeper into the website. Because what that's going to help you understand about your audience is how ready are they to take action when they come here, and how much information do they need before they are ready to convert. And we'll talk about that in a second with content. But those are some considerations you need to make, and some things that you need to think about testing. And again, that's a simple test to just change a call to action and the destination where that's going to take someone, or what it's going to do when they click on it. Awesome.
On the same vein of what you're talking about, one thing you might want to test is, and we do this on the e-com side a lot. We test if people are going to buy, like right off the bat. Very, very small amount of money going into it, but we test that like immediately. Like if we can get that, well, then we'll just go for it. If you have like some massive branding awareness, like if it's Nike and we're running ads for Nike, we don't really need to worry about the branding side of that. We just need to have the compelling offer. Let's go for the sale. So we test it, although we always assume that it's not going to just work that easy, but we still test anyways. Other times we need to nurture them. We need to get them some branding pieces. We need to consistently serve them with content and then maybe drive them to a consideration testimonial case study and then ask for the sale or whatever, right? So along that same line of thinking, you might want to ask for the consultation. People might not think that's that big of an ask, and they might feel like people are going to get amazing value out of it. Well, I'll just say more times than not, people are going to be like, that's a lot of time for me. Or, I don't know. I don't want to be sold to. I don't know if I'm ready for that. But you might as well try and see if it works, because maybe you do have some cloud out there that you don't know about, right? Or then what you would test is getting somebody into some sort of sequence, some sort of nurture sequence, be it an automated email sequence where you still ping them with different stuff. So is that kind of how y'all see it too? Go for the gusto, but then at the same time, go for the nurture at the same time and see what happens. Yeah.
And that's where you want to test. Should I give them a high funnel offer? A high funnel offer is a nurturing thing, subscribe to our list, get a free, get our 2018 year report or whatever, a high or a middle funnel offer. And then the bottom of the funnel offer is get a quote or, speak to, get a consultation, whatever.
Yeah. Awesome.
So you want to try those approaches and find out what people respond best to.
Awesome. Well, we've been kind of touching on this, content, talk about content, in any which way or form, because it can mean lots of things, right? Yes. So why don't you dig into that for us?
Yeah. So content, simply defined, just about anything on your site could be content. The images on your site could be content. The videos on your site is definitely content. The actual text on the site is content. And so what you need to be asking yourself here is kind of like I said before, how much content does someone need in order to convert? Because it's obvious. We've all been to enough websites to know that any company could barf up pages and pages of content and dozens of videos worth of content. And so it's not a question of how much content can you produce. It's a question of how much content do people need. And so this goes back to kind of what we were talking about before with the value propositions. If I'm going to have a video or multiple videos on my page, how many do they need before I can hit them with a call to action? Maybe they don't need any. Right? Or maybe they just need my one awesome 15-second hook video and they're ready to take action. Or if I have a really complicated product, I see this sometimes with SaaS companies where it's a slightly more complicated product, or maybe there's not a pain point that it's solving. Maybe it's more of a value add, right? It's just a nice to have. I might need a little bit longer of a video, or I might need a couple videos that highlight different features in order to sell my product to them, in order for them to be ready to get a quote or get a demo or whatever. And so what you need to figure out is how much should you have? So on a landing page, for example, if I'm selling a product on a landing page, I'm going to have some value propositions. So again, the value propositions are like free returns, money back guarantee, or the value propositions are the features of the product itself. And then the content is going to be all of the other stuff, the description of the product, the video that's associated, the images that you have of your product, and so you want to ask, how many images do I need to have of my product? I was literally just on a site yesterday that had like 30 product images on a product page. So my immediate question is, do you really need 30 images for your product? Maybe your audience does. Or maybe that is so many product images that they are just drowning in content. So you want to test your 30 product images against 3 and see what happens. Do conversion rates go up or down when I remove some of those images? Same thing with video. Like if I have a video, should it be the first thing on the page people see? Should it be lower on the page? If it's above or below the fold, how long should it be? What kind of video should it be? Should it, should it autoplay? No. But should it autoplay? I don't know. Maybe you have an audience that likes that. So those are the things that I test. And these are also fairly simple tests to set up at the beginning of this process. And I'll tell you a content test that I ran with Social Media Examiner that was really effective. So we ran a content test. They had a pop-up offer on their site. The pop-up offer was download our 2018 industry report, right? It was like they had this like 50-page amazing social media industry report, right? It's awesome. And so they have their call to action, and they have they had a paragraph of content. So what I wanted to test is, what format should we have that content in? So we literally tested at least 3 versions. We had one version that took that paragraph of content and broke it apart into bullet points. We had another version that removed that paragraph entirely and put a video there that explained what was in the report. We had another version that actually added additional paragraphs of content. Which one do you think performed the best?
For something like that, I would say the bullet points.
That's what I thought was going to work as well. And it didn't. The one that actually worked the best was adding additional paragraphs of content. It blew my mind, and it opened my eyes again. This is one of the things I love about my job, is that I'm constantly surprised by what works. It opened my mind again to the importance of testing. I mean,
now real quick on that test, so we can get a visual. When they went to the page, was this like the pop-up you were testing that overtook the, I know they have some pretty big pop-ups at Social Media Examiner.
Yes, yeah, they had a pop-up that took over the page and was right in the middle of the page.
That's what you were testing. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And so again, what I'm not saying is, I'm not saying that's what is going to work for everyone, because I have seen the complete opposite work. I've seen every single approach work.
Your point is
You've
testing.
Got to test, right?
Yeah.
And find out, what does your audience need to know in order to convert.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right, let's move on to distractions and diversions, right? We've talked about what we should be doing proactively. Now we got to look at, okay, what are we doing that we might need to stop doing, right?
Yes.
So give us some examples of some common distractions and, some pitfalls to avoid there.
So similar to content, just about anything on your site could be a distraction. And the question that I ask is, what could be distracting people? You never want to assume that you know what's distracting people, but what could be distracting people from taking action? So on e-commerce sites, the most common thing that I see that distracts people is too many products. You've got too many products and it's distracting people from the products they want. Or if it's on like a product detail page, like I've got somebody on my page, they're looking at this product, and then I pepper them with my other products, like related products and that kind of stuff. Those can be distractions. They can also help, right? It can also be a great way to upsell people, but those can be distractions. On like Disruptive Advertising's website, some of the things that have distracted people are having too many call to actions on a page, having too much content, having our social media links on pages where it doesn't make sense to have them.
Or highlight, or those being highlighted, right? I think Andy Crestodina, he's a big optimization guy. And he said he calls those candy colored basically exits, right?
Yes,
and people
right.
would think you want them to go there. Now, with that being said, if you have a big initiative to grow like a Facebook community that you are highly engaged with, well, then that's different. But in general, though, like put those at the bottom, almost hide them, right? I mean, am I wrong about that?
You're not wrong. And that's what you want to just look at your page holistically and say, what are all the things that I'm noticing on this page? And then let's find out, because what I will say is, and I've run thousands of tests in my career at this point, and I have not found a website yet that I've worked with that hasn't had at least one thing on every page of their site that is hurting their conversion rates. So the question that I encourage people, and it's kind of like a treasure hunt. What is that thing on your page, or multiple things on your page that are hurting your conversion rates? So this is actually the test that is probably the easiest to set up, that somebody can come in and within 5 minutes have a test built out, assuming that you have Google Optimize on your site. I call it an existence test. And the point of an existence test is to find out what is working on my page and what is hurting my page, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to take, we'll take a home page as an example, and I'm going to, inside of Google Optimize, I'm going to create at least one additional version of my site, if not a couple additional versions of my homepage. And on each of these versions, I am going to remove something. So I'm going to remove something that I think might be a distraction. And again, I always push people to the edge of discomfort here, because nobody has anything on their site they want to take off. Like, you wouldn't have put it there in the first place if you didn't want it there, right? And so my challenge is always ask yourself what could be a distraction and run a test to either validate that it should be there or validate that it should be removed. So version A, I'm going to remove my homepage banner, because guess what? Homepage banners sometimes are super helpful. Sometimes it's a huge waste of time, right? So version A, I'm going to go ahead and just push myself to the edge of discomfort. I'm going to remove my banner. Version B, I'm going to remove all of the content below the fold. What happens if I only have above the fold content here? Version C, I'm going to remove my video. I'm going to remove if I have an e-commerce site, I'm going to, instead of having 30 products on my page, I'm going to have 5. So I'm just going to remove a bunch of the products on my page, right? But again, this is not like a one size fits all approach. You want to just go in and look at your page in the lens of what might be distracting, and create some variations where you just remove some stuff. And in Google Optimize, it is literally as easy as inside of the Google Optimize interface, you click on the thing and click remove, and it's gone. I mean, it takes 30 seconds. And so it's simple to set up, and then you're going to run this test. And this is a win no matter what. If conversion rates go down, so in other words, if my site converts worse, now I know for sure with data that whatever I took off should be there, right? So if I took off my video and conversion rates go down, boom, I know that video is helping. It's doing a great job. It needs to be there.
Yeah.
And if conversion rates go up,
feeling, right? When you actually know something, right?
Right. And conversely, I mean, if conversion rates go up, well, great. Now you have a better converting page, and you know that thing was actually hurting conversion rates. So it is a win-win. You don't have to keep this test running forever. So if you remove something and conversion rates drop, just pause the test. You can pause it the next day or whatever. But you want to let the test run long enough that it's like, for sure that thing was either hurting or helping.
Awesome. All right, let's move on to the final 2 points. Thanks for all this. This is, I've already made a note I'm going to have our team with myself almost re-listen to this every time we really get in with a big account and when they need to be doing all this for them, because again, so much effort gets put into the strategy and the content and everything, and got to get this right. So let's move on to anxiety. What could be causing anxiety? You speak on that. Or you touch on that in your 6-step process here.
Yes, and I'll be brief on this because it's somewhat related with distractions, but you want to ask what might be causing people to feel anxiety. And I'll tell you, the most common perpetrators of this is, I don't know what to do on the page. I'm not sure what's going to happen if I click on a button. Something that causes anxiety, whether we like it or not, is if I have pricing on my page, it's going to cause anxiety. And so what you want to ask is, what might be causing anxiety, and what can I do to either remove that anxiety or reduce that anxiety? So again, if I have a price on my page, what I also need to think about is, how can I justify that price?
Yeah, or money back guarantees, right? Like
money back guarantee, or anything that I can do to give them some relief that it's worth this cost, right? So that's simply the question you want to ask, and there's lots of ways that you can test this, and I won't go into all of the details.
I mean, but it's impossible to. I mean, it's just so impossible to do that because there's, again, every company is a snowflake. Granted, there's best practices for dentists and there's this and that, but still every account is a snowflake. So you gotta do this for yourself. But Chris is laying out a great format that you just need to sit down, get you thinking, and then start to, take some actions and do some tests, and then finally get to a real knowledge base. So no, I hear you. That's awesome. So let's move on to responsiveness. How your mobile site should be customized. Obviously, it's pretty much table stakes these days at all sites. At least new sites or any site should be responsive. Even with all the platforms, it's just basically built in. But I think you want to go a little bit deeper than that in studying up for this. So if you could touch on that for us.
Yeah. So you have to get beyond asking the question, is my site responsive? Because it's a huge setup. Anytime you have a site that's responsive, it's easy to assume, okay, my mobile is taken care of. The question you want to ask is, do I know how my mobile site should be customized? Mobile users want different things than desktop users. whether it's a different amount of content, a different type of content, or this is the most common thing that I invite people to look at. What call to action do mobile users want? On mobile, for example, it's very easy to make a phone call, right? Like click to call. Versus on desktop, you have to pick up another device and actually dial in the number. So if a phone call is a possibility for your business, you might want to consider making that the primary call to action on your mobile site. Versus on desktop, you might want to have them fill out a form. On mobile, one thing that's really frustrating is when there's really long pages. And so something you might want to think about on mobile is, should there be a call to action that persists on the site, that follows people up and down the site? Or should it just be your menu that's following people up and down the site? Is there something I can give people to create an easier experience as they are scrolling through the site? So those are the questions that you want to ask and think about customizing.
And on that note, and give any additions to what I'm about to say, but you can design within the platforms these days for mobile, and you obviously aren't going to want to. Well, I mean, if you have the money for it, you can design every single page as in mobile but we would assume your home page and your landing pages that are the money generators, do those first, and you can go in and design for mobile, right?
Right.
And is that what y'all do as well?
Well, and so again, you want to figure out how customized does my mobile site need to be, and because you might need a completely different page, or you might just need, once it shrinks down to a mobile screen size, you might just need to swap the call to action out. That might need to be all you do, and it is very simple to do on almost any on almost any website platform. Shopify, WordPress. I mean, all of the big players out there. It's simple to do these kinds of things.
Yeah, it is. So just to clarify, you hear the word responsiveness, as of about 4 or 5 years ago, and that's when your website, when you view it on tablet or Android or your iPhone, it fits it, and it's not like you have to scroll left and right to read. So it's gonna be responsive. But what Chris is saying is, don't judge, because everyone's gonna offer that, everyone's gonna build your website, and that's gonna happen. But don't stop there, because then in the back end, you can click on, some sort of, checkbox or whatever that says designed for mobile, this page. And so you can then take stuff in and out, change stuff specifically for that page. So it's taking the next step. So view it, which it will view responsively, but that's not where you end. Keep going and change it specifically. All right, awesome. So now, what is the one simple test anyone can implement tomorrow? Now, you might have already talked about it because you've given us a lot of tests you can do, but did you have a specific one in mind you wanted to
So
highlight?
the one that I always suggest people start with is what I mentioned earlier, the existence test. Okay. Removing things and identifying where distractions are. Because again, what this will do is a couple things. Number one, it'll help you start to learn what your audience does and does not like on your current site. And it will also start to help you know to identify what should I focus future testing efforts on. If I remove a video on my page and conversion rates go down, or in other words, that video is helping conversion rates, the next test you should run is testing different types of videos in there. Because if I know the video is helping, well, let's optimize that thing even further. If I know that people want my hero banner, then let's swap out, let's change some hero banners in there. Let's test different offers, different imagery, whatever. It helps you to know where to go next with your testing roadmap. So that is where I would suggest people start. And I mentioned I have an ebook that's a starter guide for A/B testing that talks about the existence testing. It talks about Google Optimize, as well as some other tools that people ought to consider, and some other tests that are kind of low-hanging fruit tests. And so if people want to check that out, it's free. It's at disruptiveadvertising.com/guide. And people can just download that for free. Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, listeners out there, feel free to go and get it over there. But Chris, if you send that to me, we'll include it in the written synopsis of this as well. Excellent. We'll include it in the blog post so people will see that as well. Well, I think we're about out of time. Actually went a little bit over time, but it's so good. Had to keep going, get through all of this. Chris, you really have given an awesome blueprint, a very easy one as well. This stuff can get really overwhelming to the point where you don't do any of it.
But you've really given some great take homes in a great order of what to think through. And I greatly appreciate your time, and I greatly appreciate you sharing these tips and your wisdom with our audience here.
I appreciate you inviting me on the show. It was great chatting today.
All right. Thanks so much. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to the latest podcast. Feel free to go to magnificent.com/blog to see the show notes for this interview, as well as those from many other of the world's top marketing experts.